Disclaimer. My work draws heavily upon the works of Carlos Castaneda. While there are few direct quotes, the underlying concepts are drawn from his work. My interpretations of those works are provided to advance my own point of view and in no way constitute a claim to anything that was not created by me. I have no commercial interest in this work. It is provided free for those who might find value in it. I have no connection with Castaneda's estate, nor with any entity, commercial or otherwise, that claims to be connected with Castaneda or with anyone connected to him. I express no opinion on the claims of those who purport to be connected with Castaneda, in the present or in the past.
Lastly, this work should not be construed as in any way condoning, supporting, encouraging, or recommending the use of any dangerous or illegal substance, or the performing of any dangerous or illegal activities. The teaching and research methods depicted in Castaneda's works should be viewed as the result of a unique convergence of time, place, and circumstance, and not as a template that any other person should attempt to follow. Video 2. From the Ancient to the Modern. 1. Reconstructing, and moving forward. I mentioned previously that the ancient seers were eventually almost completely wiped out, not by the dangers of the second realm, but by the mundane but equally deadly dangers of the first realm, violence at the hands of neighboring groups. Perhaps these were eager to expand their territory, or were simply victims of famine in search of food. We will never know for certain. What is known is that the magnificent discoveries of the ancient seers, their beautifully organized categorization of what they had discovered, the marvelous sense of power they felt themselves possessed of, were very nearly completely lost. It is not a stretch to say that the knowledge of the other realm almost died completely in that remote past, with no certainty that anyone since would have stumbled upon it again. In fact, most of the practices of the ancient seers were lost. But, almost as if by some design, enough survived to give the modern sorcerers a firm basis on which to build. At the same time, the most indulgent and aberrant practices of ancient times were lost. It is that important last point that is at the heart of the stark differences between the ancient and modern practices of sorcery.
In the wake of the demise of the ancient seers, those who sought to carry on that knowledge and practice were faced with a serious difficulty. Clearly, to exactly replicate the path and practice of the ancient seers was not wise. In all likelihood they would find themselves meeting the same fate as their ancient counterparts, or worse. But while it might be clear that repeating the past was not an option, it was equally clear that there was no obvious better way to proceed. But over time, as the successors to the ancient seers considered the question, a way forward presented itself. As the new sorcerers looked at the rise and fall of their predecessors, it became clear that the ancient seers laid the groundwork for their own doom by their single-minded focus on the other realm. While fearless and brilliant, the ancient seers lacked any sense of sobriety or control. They went far and deep into the other realm, becoming aware of limits only after the fact by having blasted through those limits and somehow surviving. And often they didn't survive. Over time, the new sorcerers found a way forward in which the practitioner was trained in the ways and nuances of the second realm, and in ways to develop and sharpen every aspect of existing in the first realm. The end result was a sorcerer who could withstand the rigors of acting in the second realm, and who was possessed of the inner strength and solid character to be effective and strong in the first realm.
2. The Crucible. The development of the modern practice of sorcery had one final influence that distilled and, inadvertently, perfected it even more: the conquest of Central and South America by the Spaniards. Under Spanish rule, all religious practices not sanctioned by the Church were relentlessly and brutally stamped out. In this environment, the new sorcerers were not only not free to conduct their explorations out in the open, they couldn't take the chance that anyone, even friends or family, knew about their activities, lest they might be betrayed, knowingly or otherwise. To survive, the new sorcerers organized themselves into very small groups, with each group having no contact with any of the others. In this way, if the authorities discovered one group, that group's capture would not result in the capture of any of the other groups of sorcerers. This absolute secrecy and security created an even more distilled and powerful brand of sorcery. The new sorcerer's ability to respond to the ultimate pressures of the everyday world was taken to a level that wouldn't have been possible without the continual presence of an absolutely powerful and completely arbitrary authority in public place at all times. In turn, this strength of character and resiliency in the face of constant mortal danger boosted the new sorcerer's ability to understand the second realm to levels the ancient seers could never have imagined. 3. References in popular entertainment, and a helpful example. There have been numerous appropriations of Castaneda's work in popular media. The most popular of these is the concept of the Force in the Star Wars films. The Force is described in the Star Wars movies in fabulously oblique terms, in a way that is clear what the source of it is, but without creating the slightest overt connection between what is being talked about and Castaneda's concepts. I include this here because there is one much more popular and direct cribbing of these concepts in a series of movies that can be of some help in understanding the overall ideas in play. The very concept that there are two separate realms of reality, that somehow coexist without ever intruding upon one another, becomes a readily understandable concept after one has spent considerable time immersed, as it were, in the sense of possibility of such a situation. But at the beginning, it's not only difficult, but really quite counterintuitive, to even admit of the possibility of there being two parallel concurrent realms of creation around us at all times. To further accept the possibility that one can perceive and even act in this other realm is an even more far-fetched idea, on the surface of it. Along these lines, consider the Matrix films. Think about how the Matrix is presented. The Matrix is shown to be a complete, logically consistent world. While the Matrix is presented in the movies as a so-called virtual reality, a gigantic information platform on which billions of programs are running at any given moment. But at the same time, as Morpheus notes to Neo, that if one dies in the Matrix, one dies outside of it as well. Simulation or not, nothing defines realness more concisely than the finality of death. In terms of the parallel to the two realms, consider the pre-awakening Neo in the first Matrix movie. Neo, along with the vast majority of his contemporaries, has no idea that his life is anything other than what it appears to be, corporate programmer by day, virtual reality bootlegger by night. He not only has no concept that there is anything other than the reality in which he exists, he has no idea of the true nature of his mundane reality. And while the nature of everyday reality is much more complicated and outlandish than any of us suspect, for the moment the lesson of the Matrix is that Neo's reality, like our everyday existence, is completely real and consistent, but not all-encompassing. When Neo takes the pill and all is revealed, his reaction is much like what ours would be if the whole lot were dumped upon us at once. And while the idea that one could simply, knowingly, choose one pill over the other and have it all revealed is a uniquely modern and convenient one, it's difficult to imagine that the realization would have any lasting meaning delivered in such effortless fashion. Personally, I think more cases of insanity would result than cases of true understanding. Both Star Wars and The Matrix have appropriated ideas central to modern sorcery in more involved ways than what I've discussed here, and those ways will be discussed in more detail as they arise. My sole aim in this section is to try to give the listener a better idea of how, conceptually, one can be existing and completely immersed in a reality, and yet it still be possible that said reality, while describing itself and its members perfectly, does not describe everything that there is, or might be.